This is group number 11 from 1 Become ANT, and we are going to teach you on classification of contract. My name is Mayank and I am going to teach you classification on the basis of performance. Performance classification means grouping or categorizing entries based on how well they are performed in relation to defined standard goals and expectations. Common classification: high performances. Consistency: exceed targets and standards. Example: a student always scoring 85% or an employee exceeding sales target. Average performers: meet required expectation but rarely exceed them. Work steadily but lack expectational result. Example: a student scoring 50 to 70% or an employee who meets deadline but does not contribute new idea. Low performances: fail to meet minimum expectation or standards, required frequently monitoring, training or corrective actions. Example: a machine with frequent breakdowns or employee missing deadlines regularly. Explanation: this classification helps in decision making. In HR, it helps in promotional, training or termination. In education, it guides remedial, teaching or scholarship. In business industry, it supports resources, allocation and productivity improvements. Case study: employee performance in a sales company background. Company, the name of the company is XYZ Retail Private Limited. Our objective would be to classify sales employee based on quarterly performance. Company set a target of 10,000 per quarter. Employee performance is measured against this benchmark. Classification: high performance: a employee exceeding 120% of the target. Example: employee receiving 150%. Average performer: a employee who is receiving 80 to 120%. Low performer: below 80%. High performance receive incentive, leadership roles. Average performers will be given skill development training, and low performance received improvement plans or shifted to support roles. Conclusion: classification on the basis of performance helps in fair evaluation, target support, strategies and the growth. The XYZ case study shows how company can use it to reward excellence, improve or average performance or corrective measures. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Shreya and I will be covering the topics of express contract, implied contract and quasi-contract. So express contract is basically a contract in which the statement or the purpose of the agreement is clearly stated. For example, a rental agreement with the landlord. The terms, the conditions and the amount of money to be paid and how long that the tenant can live in that particular house is all stated and clearly defined in the contract. Second, implied contract. Implied contract is basically a contract which is only expressed through action or conduct and not by words. For example, in a restaurant, when you go to a restaurant and you eat, you cannot say that I will not pay for this. You are obliged to pay for it, which is already implied. Third, quasi-contract. It is an obligation by law. Law states that even though there is no contract, it is as if you are obliged to follow it. For example, you get goods delivered to your house, even though you didn't order them, you're obliged to pay for them. That is what the law states. That's all. Thank you.
Good morning everyone. I'm Punith D from BCom ANT from Group Learn. I'm here to explain two concepts. One is standard form contract and other one is ecom. So standard form contract is a pre-drafted agreement where one party sets the terms and the other party has little or no ability to negotiate. It's basically a take it or leave it situations. These type of contracts are common in consumer transactions like signing up for a mobile phone plan, insurance policies, banking agreements, employment agreements. For example, when you sign up for a mobile phone plan, the service provider presents a contract outlining fees, service, terms, penalties for early cancellations. Customer must accept these terms in order to get the service without modifying. And the second one is e-com. What is a contract over the internet? A contract over the internet is a legally binding agreement formed electronically where the parties do not meet physically. These contracts are enforceable by law, like traditional contracts, as long as they meet basic legal requirements, offer requirements, acceptance, consideration, and intent. For example, a freelance designer offers a client can agree a logo design project entirely online. The client emails the project details and offer to pay $300, half in the upfront and half after delivery. The designer replies by accepting the terms, and both the parties confirm through emails or signature platforms. These mutual consent combined by the client terms and considerations makes the contract legal valid. Such contracts are valid used for services subscriptions.
I am Shanvi and I am going to explain the topic about valid contract and void contract. First of all, what is valid contract? Valid contract is the one that essentially meets all the essential requirements required by the law and is enforceable in the court of law. Some of the essential elements required by the law as per the Indian Contract Act 1872 are: first, it should have offer and acceptance; it should have second, it should have lawful consideration; third, it should have lawful object; fourth, it has the intention to create legal obligation; fifth, it should have the capacity to parties, that the person involved in the contract should not be of unsound mind or should not be disqualified by any law. Sixth, it should have free consent, that it should not be created under undue influence or fraud or misrepresentation, etc. I would like to explain the valid contract with an example. For example, A agrees to sell B a bike for ₹50,000 and B accepts the offer and pays the money. Now, both the parties are competent and the object is legal and there is intention to create legal relationship. Thus, this is a valid contract. Now, I would like to explain void contract. What is void contract? Void contract is the one that is not enforceable in the court of law and has no legal effect. It is as if it is never existed. Some of the reasons why a contract can be a void: first, when the agreement is against the public policy; second, when the object and the consideration is unlawful; when the agreement is third, when the agreement is created with an incompetent person, that is of unsound mind or is disqualified by any law; fifth, when the agreement is without the consideration. These are the reasons why a contract can be a void for any party. Now, I would like to explain a void contract with an example. For example, A gives B ₹10,000 to smuggle the drugs into the city, which is banned. Now, the object is illegal and hence the contract is void. Now, one difference between both the valid and the void contract are: first, valid contract is enforceable by law and void contract is not enforceable by law and has no legal effect. Now, thus, a valid contract is the one which is enforceable by law and has legal binding, and void contract is not recognized by law at all.
Hello everyone, my name is Muthuraj D Gowda from Group 11. I will be taking the concepts of void agreement and voidable contracts. Void agreement, as defined in the books, Section 2G, an agreement which is not enforced by law by either of the parties is void. This means no legal rights or obligations can be raised out of void agreement. It is void at the very start. The agreement itself is a void. For example, the law says that any consideration or agreement with a minor is void at agreement, meaning if A enters into an agreement with a B who is a minor, the court will rule out it is a void at agreement. Now coming to the next topic, voidable contract. As defined in the books, according to section 2I, an agreement which is enforced by law at the option of one or more of the parties but not at the option of the others is a voidable contract. This sounds complicated, but it's very simple. It just says when a person abuses the free consent of the other party and forces him or her to get into a contract, makes it a voidable contract. The one who has got abused, the victim, can always cancel the contract at any given point of time, as he was not given free consent to get into the contract. He was forced into it. It can be through physical force or mental pressure or any kind of thing which takes away the free consent of that person. This is known as voidable contract.
Hello, this is Vahini and I am going to explain unenforceable contracts and illegal agreements. So first, unenforceable contracts. It is a valid agreement. It fulfills all the essentials of a contract like offer, acceptance, consideration and capacity, but cannot be enforced in a court of law due to some legal technicality. Such contracts cannot be enforced in the court of law until and unless the defects are rectified. Thus, the agreement exists, but if one party refuses to perform, the other party does not get any legal remedy. A contract becomes unenforceable if the suit is not filed in proper time, if there is no written or registered documents and stamp duty, and also if it contains certain terms which are too vague for the court to enforce. For example, oral agreement for sale of land. Let's say X agrees orally to sell his land to Y. But sale of land requires a written and registered document as per Transfer of Property Act. As this agreement lacks a written proof, this contract is considered unenforceable by law. Next, illegal agreements. A contract which is either prohibited by law or otherwise against the policy of law is an illegal agreement. In other words, any agreement whose object or consideration is illegal are considered illegal agreements. These agreements are void from the beginning and creates no legal rights or obligations. Collateral or related agreements also become void. Some examples of illegal contracts are agreement to commit crimes, dealing drugs without license, smuggling goods, and also wagering agreements in the states where betting is prohibited.